We're rapid fire. Everyone put your hands together. Give it up for your next guy, Jono.
Hello, thanks for coming out. I'm Jono Lee. What's with all the lactose intolerant people in the room? I'm lactose intolerant too, right? Sometimes I like to punch my lactose intolerance in the face by eating a big slice of cheesecake. Turns out lactose intolerance is a hell of a counterpuncher. The counterpunch is boo. So, who here watches Bondi Vet? Anyone? A couple of you? How many marriage proposals do you think Dr. Chris Brown gets every week? I mean, it's this blonde, square-jawed, good-looking surfer boy with a great body who makes a living saving the lives of adorable animals on national television. There was this one episode where he took an emergency C-section on a pug, and then he individually revived each puppy by giving them mouth-to-mouth. I nearly proposed my fucking self now. I mean, look, I never really used to care about the issue of gay marriage, because the shield of straight male privilege affords me the luxury of being blind to social injustice. But now that I realise homophobia stands between me and marriage with Dr. Chris, I'm practically a fucking activist, man. See, the thing that appeals to me about him is he's got those blonde, like Aryan poster boy good looks, but he doesn't look like he'd be one of those guys with a bogan Chinese character tattoo. You know the ones? Although, to be honest, I quite enjoy seeing those. Because unless the guy found the one bikie tattoo artist with a working knowledge of Mandarin, probably doesn't say what he thinks it does. Oh man, on my arm, I've got the Chinese characters for Honourable Warrior. No, you haven't, Bogan. On your arm, you've got the Chinese characters for Fuck Nappy. Now, I don't know what a Fuck Nappy is, because I made it up. But it sounds kind of useful, doesn't it? Like, now, dear, there's no need to argue about who's sleeping in the wet spot tonight. I'm wearing my Fuck Nappy. Oh, fuck nappy. These are the things I come up with when I'm bored at work, which happens all the time because the bastards in IT have started blocking all my favourite websites. You know, the theory being that if they block all the good websites, eventually you've got no choice but to do what you get paid to instead of pissing around on the internet all day. But that's not really what happens, is it? When IT block all the good websites, you just lower your standard just to It gets to the point where you spend 8 hours a day on the Bureau of Meteorology website. Holy shit, there's a low pressure system over Tasmania again? You email that link to your colleagues and shit. Lol, Tasmanian weather, send. So, I'm Korean. You've probably gathered that already from my indecipherable accent. White people ask me all the time if I'm North or South Korean. So here's a tip. You're talking to a Korean person. Does he show obvious signs of having been executed for insubordination to a totalitarian state? No? Then it's probably South Korean. Speaking of white people, I ran into one of my ex-girlfriends the other day, and her new boyfriend was really ugly. And we're not talking any ordinary kind of ugly here. We're talking Gary Busey ugly. We're talking about the kind of ugly you can taste. When you see the bloke coming around a corner and you just sort of go, oh God, oh. What is that? It's like licking a battery covered in poo. And this was really depressing, because I feel like my ex being with a really ugly guy somehow makes me ugly by association. Because the only way to go from this to that is if this is way uglier than I realise. No, maybe when I think some woman is seductively licking her lips at me from across a bar, she's actually thinking, oh God, what's that pooey battery flavour? It's in my mouth. So, this ex of mine didn't like to read, which bothered me, because I love to read. I bought a Kindle recently. Did you know that when you own a Kindle, it completely changes your reading habits? Because nobody knows what you're reading. You know, when you're reading an actual book and people can see what it is, you want to be like, well, as you can see, I'm rereading War and Peace, with a particular emphasis on Tolstoy's criticism of military historians. But now that nobody knows what I'm reading, it's just like, Babysitter's Club up in this motherfucker! So no, she wasn't much of a reader. She wasn't much of a thinker in general, really. I had to break up with her because she did not understand pie charts. You know, the most basic form of graph there is, completely over her head. Now that may seem like a fairly trivial reason to break up with someone, but it was actually kind of serious. See, every time we had sex, I'd find myself thinking, does someone who doesn't understand pie charts have the mental capacity to consent to this? Am I a rapist? And once you're asking, how the romance is gone. Look, I'm about out of time, so I'll leave you with this. When I was growing up, my dad's motto in life was live for your next laugh. Very upbeat, right? Yeah, the poor bastard drank himself to death on his own, 8,000 kilometers from his family. Relax, there's a joke coming. So when that happened, I got that motto tattooed on my chest to remember him by. You know, live for your next laugh. What an appropriate tattoo for a comedian. But I've been clinically depressed for the last 7 years. Irony! Now, I don't know if you'll be able to see, but the tattoo's in Latin, which I guess is the Asian equivalent of when Bogans get Chinese characters. Thanks, guys.
Jono Lee, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah!